Awesome, thank you. Well, Emily, let's go on to the first slide. We have a great turnout. We're at 100. 100 folks on this webinar. Welcome, everyone. As you log in, feel free to use the chat to introduce yourself to the group, your name, what part of the state or organization you're representing, and then help us answer this question. What outdoor activity makes you lose track of time?
This will be
Emily,
fun with
Catherine, I'll have you also chime in.
Yeah. Oh, it says chat is disabled. Miriam.
Oh. Well, that's not good.
Thanks for those who sent in a question. Letting me know that.
Yeah. Well, apologies for that. What I'll try to do, good thing this is caught early on. What I can do is while we do the presentation, I'll go into Zoom and make that modification because I know the Q&A will be important as we do the just the questions that you might have. So then let's go to the next slide, Emily. On the agenda today, we're going to introduce ourselves so you can get a sense of who we are and the role, and our role specifically with the Route to Parks Grants Program. We'll go do an overview about the grant opportunity and also review the actual grant application, specifically in some areas where there might be some questions. We'll go through that. We'll review important dates, and then we'll have a chance for you to ask any questions that you might have about the grant opportunity. Next slide. We'll do introductions. I'll start with myself and then I'll turn it over to Emily and then Catherine. My name is Miriam Solis Coronel. I'm Director of Community Engagement with Parks California. Been with the organization for almost 4 years. I get to work with the department and with organizations across the state to create programs that are providing a sense of place and belonging in state parks. Our headquarters are in Sacramento, but I am based in San Diego. Emily, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Marian. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Henry. I'm an Associate Program Manager with Parks California, and I've been with the organization for just over 2 years. I see some familiar names, not faces in this environment, but names. Welcome back for those folks who have applied or attended one of these sessions before. A big part of my role is supporting the organization's grant making, and I'm so excited to talk about Route to Parks with you all today. Catherine, I'll hand it to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine Caldwell. I'm Assistant Deputy Director for the Division of Strategic Planning and Recreation Services. And one of my roles and joys over the last year or so has been to help pull together a funding program that will expand and increase access to underserved communities around inland waterways. And that's what brings us to this partnership with Parks California. And you'll hear more about that later.
Thank you all. Thanks for joining. I'll share a little bit about Parks California. We're a relatively newer organization. We've been about 5 years here in support of this incredible state park system, and we're really here to strengthen the department and the services that they're providing for all visitors and the care of these places. So if we go to the next slide, Emily, talk a little bit about how we do this work. So we are statewide. We are working with the department across the state in really setting priorities that are driving the mission, the vision of the department. So every couple of years, we seek input from headquarters down to the field and to identify what are those priorities, what are the needs, and as a partner, especially as a nonprofit statutory partner, how can we support that vision? One of those visions that came through was access and ensuring that all people have a sense of connection and the opportunity to enjoy state parks. So the Route to Parks program is one of those initiatives that was birthed from the very beginning. Let's go to the next slide, Emily. this talks a little bit about our uniqueness and how we work with the department across the state. So it is a statewide organization. We are working with cross-sector partners, also folding in communities so that it is relevant and it is something that communities are looking for. We also try to illuminate the success stories that are happening from the partners' perspective to also state parks and the experiences that they're hosting for communities, while also bringing in additional investments to ensure that that gap is closed and innovation is accelerating at a pace that otherwise might be a bit slower. So if we go to the next slide, I did started to talk a little bit about access, but today we'll talk about Route to Parks. Specifically, what I'll share right now is that this is our fourth year. This is our fourth grant cycle, and it has come in as a shared priority between Parks California and state parks. And the intent here is really to reduce the transportation barrier that we so often hear of communities. Accessing state parks sometimes means that people have to go to it. It's not easily accessible. So what we build is designed a program and a grants program that is supporting communities across the state and really tackling this issue and ensuring that communities have a memorable experience in state parks. This program has been funded through public dollars and then through our fundraising dollars, bringing in private dollars in to augment those pool of funds. This program also meets the vision of Outdoors for All, which Catherine will share a little bit more during her piece. But just to share a little bit about what has happened over the last 3 years, we're launching our fourth year. That means that we have 3 years of a grants program under our belt. And within that, we have received 135 proposals across the state. The request has been about $2.4 million. And if everybody were to get supported, we would have reached about 93,000 people in their relationship with nature. But we all know that funds are limited. And what we were able to do is, so far, we have been able to fund close to $1 million, connecting 15,000 people to parks. And that has meant about 60 grants across the state. Let's get to the next slide. Awesome. So now for the exciting piece, what you all are waiting for, learning about this grant cycle. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Emily to talk a little bit about the new grant.
Thanks, Marian. All right, so this is what everyone's here to talk about, the 2024 Route to Parks grant cycle. So we're going to go over some overview and updates, and we'll dive into the application a bit, and what we're looking to fund during this time we have together as well. So new this year, we have a couple of partnerships that we are going to be infusing into our grant program. So first, I'll tee this up for Catherine to share a little bit about the Waterway Connections Initiative and how that is feeding into our Route to Parks grant program.
Thank you. So the Waterway Connections Initiative is brand new. It's so new that we haven't yet rolled it out for public comment, but that is coming. So what you're seeing today is a little bit of a sneak peek. This initiative is one-time funding that we received, approximately $150 million, that's really focused on expanding and increasing outdoor access to underserved communities around waterways, with a connection to waterways, with a focus on state parks, facilities, and partnerships. And I'm saying that specifically because I already see a great question on the inland waterways definition. And Carol, please send us your email address and we'll make sure that you get notified when, or anyone who's interested in being notified when the Waterway Connections Initiative framework is rolled out to the public, and we'd be happy to invite you to comment on that. So, and it could go out anytime. So in any case, what you're seeing here today is one of the early actions that we've identified. Of that 150 million, we've identified about 50 million in early actions. And this funding is supporting the Route to Parks program as well as the career pathways, which hopefully we'll hear about again in another venue sometime soon. The priority communities for Waterway Connections Initiative are dense, the legislation says urban communities, but the definition of that is densely populated areas of 2,500 people or more, as defined by the US Census. And the waterways, as listed in the statute, are rivers, inland waterways, inland water systems. So it's pretty broad. And while the focus is on state parks facilities, it is also on state parks partnerships. So there's some room for some creativity there. So in terms of, just for your interest, some of the other early action items that have been identified under the Waterway Connections Initiative are some facilities improvements at some state park units that absolutely serve our priority communities, and they include Delta Meadows, Brandon Island State Park, Turlock State Recreation Area, the Bowtie parcel at Los Angeles State Historic Park, and Caswell Memorial State Park, and Hatfield as well. So some of those are in the Central Valley, which are, is a huge underserved population there. So we're really looking at that area and building on the Central Valley vision that the department put a lot of effort into identifying recreation opportunities for those underserved communities several years ago. In terms of the Route to Parks program, Heather Holm, who's our acting chief of interpretation and education, she and her team are the point of contact for state parks regarding Route to Parks grants involving state park units. So she would be your point of contact as you learn more about how to apply for these funds. And I think that covers my part, but happy to take questions later on as we get there. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Really appreciate you sharing some context about the initiative. And really, I'll talk about K-12 serving organizations as well. These two are on here because, some of the funding we have acquired to grant out through the Route to Parks grant program are from the Waterway Connections Initiative and from a K-12 initiative as well. So there'll be two kind of highlights or hotspots that we're looking for in our grant applications to make yourselves competitive for funding. The last thing I want to highlight that's new this year for those who have applied for funding in the past or considered funding or received funding from us for Route to Parks, we have a little bit of a different grant cycle timeline where we are going to be funding projects that will be through calendar year 2024. So your projects can take place anytime in between January 1 of 2024 through December 31st. Doesn't have to be the whole year. Some people do, concentrated summer programming, but that's the timeline we're looking at for projects. All right, so now I'm going to talk a bit about this program. What is it? What are we looking to fund? Who can apply? Things like that. So our overarching goal of Route to Parks is to improve park access for all so people can create authentic connections with nature. Pretty broad, that could mean something completely different to completely different communities throughout the state. And it's intentionally, framed that way. And in terms of who can apply for funding, what projects are eligible, we have 4 main points of criteria. The first one is that your projects are primarily providing transportation to and or from California state parks and beaches, or California state park partnerships, such as partner operated properties or partner operated programs at state parks. And this is where we see that connection and hope for wanting to fund programs that are connecting people to inland waterways, inland lakes, rivers, watersheds, and water systems. The second point of criteria of the 4 is that we're looking for programs that offer a valuable recreational, environmental, cultural, or historical learning experience. So again, really broad, the kind of experience that programs can propose in parks, can really vary. So just know that we're looking for, 1 or more of these 4 types of experiences that you're proposing in your proposals. The third point of criteria is that we're looking to reach underrepresented communities who may face challenges getting to or enjoying parks and or lack opportunities to create meaningful connections to nature. So as Miriam acknowledged at the beginning of this presentation, and as the first kind of point of criteria states as well, we are looking to provide and address the transportation barrier to park access, but we recognize that communities throughout the state also have other barriers that have, caused them to feel not welcome or being able to access state parks or parks throughout the state. And then the last point of criteria is that we're looking to fund projects that address those parts of the state with the greatest transportation needs. Typically what we do with that is you look at, our pool of grantees. Where do we see people? Where have we seen people we've been able to fund in the past? And like Catherine said, Central Valley Vision, inland waterways, that's a higher priority for us as well. All right, in terms of the timeline, I already covered the timeline, so I'll just repeat it once again. The grant projects that you are applying with should take place sometime in the calendar year of 2024. And for this year, which is a bit different in past if you've applied before, we're anticipating awards will average $35,000. We do encourage folks to request the true cost of their program, so you don't have to come in right at 35, but that's where we're envisioning right now the average will be across our grantee pool. In terms of qualifying applicants, we have, hopefully a broad list here that we can see all of you fitting into. So of course, 501c3 organizations, federal and state recognized tribal governments, Native 7871 organizations, which are tribal nonprofits that are registered that way, fiscally sponsored community organizations or government agencies. Two things I want to note here is that if you are a 501c3 that is applying for this funding, please make sure that your nonprofit is in good standing with your reporting requirements to the state of California. That is something that we check before we award funds. And then also, if you are a fiscally sponsored community organization, you'll need to provide a little bit more information about that fiscal sponsorship and provide some documentation that that sponsorship is active. All right. So I talked a bit about, the 4 main points of criteria, how much money we're looking to give per person or per organization, who can apply. There are also 5 preferences that we tend to look at when we're reviewing applications. So when we see people who we have funded in the past under Route to Parks, they've hit, 1 or more or 2 or more of these preferences. And these are listed on our website, listed in the grant application. So you can take this into consideration as you're coming up with the narrative for your proposals, but I'll go through them here. So the first preference that we'll be looking for is that you're including programming or experiences at California state parks and state park partnerships that connect people to inland waterways. The second is that you're delivering memorable experiences in nature through collaboration with other stakeholders and delivering programs that they alone would not be able to provide. One thing I want to call out here that we do ask, and I'll cover later in the presentation when we go through the application questions, is that here we're looking with this preference, do you partner with other organizations to carry out this work? Is this work that has been organized and proposed in coordination with the community that you're looking to serve? So there are some questions in our application that will get at that. The third one is that your proposals are providing participants with multiple meaningful outdoor experiences in parks. So knowing that we're trying to build this lifelong connection to nature, and that's easier the more often you come. So oftentimes the projects we do fund are those who do several visits or offer several park trips to their participants. Our fourth preference points that we are looking for is that you're going to be strengthening collaboration and partnership with California state parks. So outside of bringing folks to parks, we also want to help build and create and strengthen this ecosystem of nonprofit partners that are working with the state park system. And for some of you, that may be a really strong partnership you already have. And so for some of you, this might be brand new, but we'll be looking at that in our applications as well. And then our last one is that your proposal has an innovative and relevant transportation approach for participants. This is really varied across prior projects, but really making sure that what you're proposing as the transportation approach for this project is rooted in what the needs of your community are and will be helpful to them. Marian, I saw you came off mute. Do you have something you want to add? No? Okay. Okay. Sorry for calling him. Oh, I know. It's because I'm handing it to you. This is why you're off mute. So now I'll pass it back to Marian. She'll share this very important information.
It is a little alert here. We can go to the next slide, Emily. And we have folks on the call that have applied in the past or are current grantees. This will likely be a pretty significant change to you. And this is a change that we made based on feedback, both from the applicant's perspective, but also from our partners at state parks. In the past, what we've asked all applicants to do is to have conversations with the park that they're intending to host their activities, and for the park to provide a letter of acknowledgement. That was a form to signal like were conversations that were had, and yeah, that there was conversations, there was conversations that really were building a partnership, right? Also an opportunity to learn about what other offerings and activities were at the park, potentially talking about special permits if your activity required one. All of those things that really surface as you start thinking about some of the logistics. So the biggest change has been that letter of acknowledgement is not a requirement. But what continues to be is that conversation between the applicant and the park that they're proposing to have these activities. The idea here is to make sure that there is dialogue before the award is made so that anything that could be identified ahead of time is identified. Sometimes we're going to a park and we're proposing activities at a park, or maybe there's an annual big festival happening and the park is going to be closed. So those would only surface if there was conversations happening beforehand. So we encourage you to start the conversations as soon as possible. If it happens today or tomorrow, that is not too soon, friends. These conversations should start happening now, especially because summer is a very, very busy period. Staff is often pulled because something is happening at the park, activities, programming, and it might take a little bit of time for them to respond to you. So we encourage you to start making that outreach now, even if you have a concept of what you're proposing for this work. Those early conversations are going to be invaluable for your planning. And it's also a requirement for when you actually submit the proposal. It'll be one of the first fields that you enter, and you'll be asked to enter the name of the person you spoke to and their contact information. We will then use that information during the review process. If you have any questions about who do I even start these conversations with, maybe you're an organization that is just building a relationship with the park. Typically, this contact information is found on the park page, but we encourage you to contact the superintendent or the park interpreter. They have also received this information and they should be aware of folks going out to them and starting these conversations with them. If you have challenges getting a hold of someone, feel free to reach out to Emily. Her information is here, and we're happy to do the one-on-one introduction.
Thanks, Marian. Appreciate that. All right, I'm tapping back in. So now we're going to go over the actual grant application itself. I'm going to talk a bit in detail about some of the questions. We want to make sure you are aware of really what we're looking to get out of those questions. But to start that off, I want to just share some photos from some of our current or previously funded projects. And I also want to share descriptions of all of these previously funded projects are available on our website. So if you want to take a look at what kind of projects have we funded before, you can see the description for what projects have made it through the funding round. So first, this is one of our grantees, and maybe if you're on here, you can just like do the wave icon. I don't know if that works in webinars, maybe not. But this is a photo from Ventana Wildlife Society, who's brought youth and families from the Salinas Valley to Andrew Malera State Park and other parks throughout the Monterey area. Here you can see them, camping, setting up campground. Next, we have Insight Garden Program, a trip at Folsom Lake State Recreation Area. This is a nonprofit that serves incarcerated and formerly incarcerated individuals and has brought folks through their reentry program out to state parks. Here's another grantee, Outdoor Outreach. Pictured here is a trip out backpacking in Anza Borrego Desert State Park through their youth programs. And then last, our example, as we just ground ourselves in things, what have we funded before, is City Heights Community Development Corporation down in San Diego. This project that we funded a couple of years ago was to show folks in the City Heights neighborhood how they can get to Silver Strand State Beach without a car. So they did a multimodal transit trip where they took a ferry, they took the trolley, and they biked into the park and had some activities on the beach. Now I'll talk a bit deeply about the application, and I'll go through the ones that are highlighted in green. So this should mirror as close as it could be what are the main questions in the grant application. So we have a couple different sections. So the first one, application information, is where we gather some high level information, the name of your project, what type of organization are you, your program and project locations. It's important to be as specific as you can, the name of the parks. You can check, there's a link within the grant application system right at this question prompt where you can check if the parks you're looking to visit are state parks. Since a lot of times, we view all parks in California as state parks, but you can check in there which ones are actually state parks. But try to be as specific as you can because it lets us know and be able to make a good determination where the funding is going throughout the state. You'll also be asked what types of locations are you going to? And then there's a project summary and background piece or part of the application where you'll give us just a quick summary of your application and about who you are. Then we get into the actual, details of your program. So the first one will be describe the issues affecting the community's access to state parks, beaches, or waterways, and what is your organization's prior involvement on these issues. So you want to know what is the issue you're looking to solve? What is it? If it's beyond transportation, that are the access barriers that your communities are facing, this is where you can tell us really what those are and how you've partnered with those communities before, either in that way or in other avenues and other projects to help support, trying to address those access barriers. The second question is, what approaches will you take to create solutions to the issues you described? What specifically will the participants do? And what are your transportation plans? So this is really taking what you shared with us in question 1 about here are the access barriers or other barriers to experiencing state parks or experiencing parks in the outdoors that your community are looking to serve faces. And what are you going to do? What exactly, how is it tied to those barriers you identified? And really, what are your participants going to do? How are you going to bring them to the park? We do fund projects, all projects that we fund have a transportation component to it, but pretty much all projects too have an experience at each park that they're visiting. So this is really where you really get to tell us how are you going to be addressing the transportation barrier, and then what are you going to do with folks? You're going to go camping, you're going to go kayaking, hiking. There's, sky's the limit really on what people can do in parks. And then the third one I'll highlight here is tell us about the participants' program experience and duration. So again, giving us a bit more detail of what are they going to experience on site, how long are they there? Is it, 3 single-day trips to a park, or is it that plus an overnight, or is it primarily camping? Really, what is the duration of the program that you're going to be providing to your participants? The next section of the grant application is where you'll outline your project goals, outputs, and outcomes. So here we're really looking for measurable program outputs and outcomes. So first, share with us your project goals, and then second, you'll share with us your outputs. What we ask for in the application is first, how many people do you intend to reach and bring it to parks? And then second, how many visits do you propose doing throughout your grant period? And then there's a third option that's just other. If there's another type of output that you'll be creating through this program, you can put that in there, and if not, that's okay too. The third one is participant outcomes. So here we're looking for measurable outcomes such as say a change in your participants' knowledge, behavior, attitude that results from your efforts, or something like increase appreciation for the outdoors, increase interest in spending time outside, increase interest in visiting state parks. And then we'll ask, how will you measure that success? We'll have some tools we'll provide to grantees as well. But really, if these are the outcomes you're laying out, what are the steps and what are the tools you'll be using to measure those outcomes will give us a sense of what your project is holistically. The next section of the application is about population and the geographic community that you're going to be serving. So we want to know, as specific as you can be, who are you going to be bringing into the parks? Where are you coming from? Who are they? Just to give us a sense as we're looking across the state, really where people are coming from, where they're going to, and who they are. So, if there's also a specific population that you focus on, say like veterans or foster youth or the queer community, this is also an opportunity where you can name that as well. The second question is, how will you reach the audience? So what ways do you engage with this community? So if it's a recurring program that you have, you can share some details about how you engage with your participants so far. If it's a new one, which is totally okay too, we have funded brand new projects for their first year of doing these programs. How do you plan to reach them? What are ways that you've identified that you'll be able to gain interest and get folks to know about the program and come into the perks with you? And third is, how do you involve program participants in the program development process? If so, how? So going back to one of those preferences that I stated before, thinking about what other stakeholders or partners that you work with in developing this program, and knowing that the actual community of program participants is a really important one. So we want to hear, do you collaborate with them to help design the trips, or have they been a part of the process in you developing this proposal? Or are there ways that you will engage them throughout the grant period to help frame the experiences that's something that's really relevant and interesting to them?
Emily, I think we lost your audio. No. Maybe you need to take a break. I could take it from here while you figure out the audio. This slide highlights some of the attachments that you'll need to attach to your application. The project budget, which will provide a template for, a list of your board members, the financial statements, your 990. If your organization has a photo or liability release form, that's also noted, mainly just to make sure that we're able to use some of those photos within the storytelling and celebration of the work that you're doing locally. If you are fiscally sponsored, including a letter of certification would also be added to that application. Is your audio back?
Can you hear me now?
You're back.
I thought the wired headphones were the best approach. Turns out they were not. But thanks for letting me know, and thanks for jumping in. So I have a couple more slides to close this out, and then we will open it up for Q&A. I've seen we already have 27 questions in there. So even as you are thinking about these, feel free to jot them down, and there's probably some Q&A that I'll answer as well that I don't see. So really thinking about this slide is for our grants management software. How do you apply? So we use an online grants management tool and grant application tool through a company called Foundant. You should be able to access this portal through our website, our Route to Parks page on the Parks California website. New this year, you are able to preview the application as it will be seen in the system without creating an account. But to apply, you will need to create an account. If you have any troubles with it, you can email me. My email is right on that login page, or you can email grants@parkscalifornia.org and that'll get to me too. But this tool has worked really well for us. You can collaborate with other users to work on an application together. You can save as you go. We have it back as a reference. So just want to call that out. This is a fully online application process. Okay, so what is our timeline? What are important dates to consider? So today you're here for this informational webinar. I've already seen some of you have scheduled some time with me, but we do have office hours available on at least 3 dates, August 15th, 31st, and September 15th. We have time slated from 10 to 3. There is a link on our Route to Parks page on the Parks California website that you can use the tool to directly schedule 15 minutes with me. If you have questions about your proposal, if there are things that you didn't think to ask today, or as you're working more through things, you want to just double check, is this the right approach, or is this the right fit? Or really any questions that or any way we can help you in strengthening your proposal, we have time slated for this. And if none of the times work, you can email me, which I'll drop my email in the chat, and then or the grants@parkscalifornia.org email. They'll both get to me. So our proposals, we are closing proposals. They're due to us on September 22nd, 2023, which is a Friday. That we will then go through our review process, and we anticipate making funding announcements early in December of 2023. And then we'll have grant agreements released out at the same time, due back to us the middle of December 2023. If selected for funding, we'll have a grantee welcome call in January 2024 to remind you all of, have a chance for everyone to meet each other, remind you all of the intent and purpose of this grant program, and see if there's, any resources we can share with you at that time. And then through the grant reporting year, we'll have 2 reports. We'll have a midterm report due at the end of July to give some information about the first 6 months of the program, and then a final report that is cumulative that'll be due a month after the grant period closes on January 31st, and this should be 2025, I'm realizing, so we'll need to update that. Okay, and this is my last slide. Well, it's a long one before our Q&A. So we have compiled a list over the years of running this program of some resources, ideas, and recommendations that may be helpful to you in planning your proposals. So first, just want to highlight, we have resources and recommendations for group outings. State Parks' Office of Community Involvement is a really great resource for community groups. They have FAM Camp, which if you go through the outdoor recreation leadership training, you are able to have your organization use the FAM Camp supplies, which is free camping supplies, everything you could need free of charge. There's also an outdoor youth connection program as well, where they have youth programming specific for bringing folks into state parks. So definitely check these out. When we PDF these slides and send them out, all of these will be hyperlinked, and you'll be able to see all of them and click through them. We also have a list of some ideas for pre, during, and post-park experiences and activities. All parks have some version of an interpretive program. Some have interpreters on site. So think about incorporating that into your proposals. We have the PORTS program, the Passports program, which is really about blended access and virtual access to state parks through classrooms. So that might be something that is already going on in your community of the teachers if you're working with a specific class or a specific grade or a specific school district. I won't read all of them, but they'll all be linked. There's a lot of resources out there, and we've tried to compile a list based on what we've seen people use and what we know about, so that people know there are tools and resources available to you. And as Marian said, with that pre-application conversation with state parks, it's where you'll really be able to talk with state park staff on what types of things like this exist in the exact park you're looking to visit, and they can come up with some ideas of how you can incorporate it into your program and participant experience. We also share a participant survey tool with all of our grantees. It's optional. That will, if you don't already have a mechanism to assess your programming or assess the impact of your programming on your participants, this is a tool where you can get to see how do they feel after your outing. And then we also provide some engagement and support through the grant period. We typically host peer learning sessions or learning sessions identified by our grantee community. We have mid-year check-in calls where we try to get a sense of what's really hard for you, and if there's anything we can do to help connect you. Really trying to mirror, those pre-application office hours, the availability we have to the applicants, even throughout our grant period, to help make your programs a success and support you in any way that we can. And with that, we are now at the FAQ and Q&A. I will say there is something that I didn't say that I don't know if it's been asked yet, but I'm just going to answer it. So apologies for not saying this earlier in the presentation, but people typically ask, do all of the parks that I want to visit have to be state parks? Do all of the parks have to be here in a certain region? And the answer is no. The way we have funded projects in the past is you can visit other parks, regional park, local park, city park, county park, national park, wherever you want to go, as long as the majority of the visits that you're including in your proposal are at a state park site. And this year we'll look at the majority of the visits, trying to see if we're really trying to fund you with the pot of money we have for inland adventures. Looking at the majority of your visits are happening at those inland parks with parks with bringing you to inland waterways. So I just want to say that at the top, because that's a question I get often. You can include other parks as long as the majority are state parks. And that is also why I included that link in the application system where you say, where are you going to be taking participants? So you can check, is this a state park? I might think it's a state park, but is it actually a state park? Is it a national park? So I will just pause there now.
Thank you for sharing that, Emily. There are a lot of great questions on the chat, and I've been trying to answer them as fast as I can. I think I'm 50-50 with what I've been able to answer and what I have not been able to answer. But there have been questions about what is the funding available for? Like, what can I cover? And since I see multiple questions around that, in the grant proposal, we understand that while this program is intended to reduce the transportation cost in what it takes to build these relationships and these experiences in nature, the proposal is not exclusive to that. We understand that there's cost associated with those experiences, including staff, materials, programming, maybe special permit if it requires one from the park side. Indirect, those are allowable expenses. What we want to make sure and what we look at is that it's a balanced one, right? That we are making sure that those expenses are balancing out with the expenses that are related to the activity. Let me see if there's any other questions.
Thanks, Marian. That's a good call out. And I will say we will be posting an FAQ to our grant page on the Parks California website. It's going to be finalized once we take all of the questions you've been asking today to see if they're already on there or if we need to add any new ones. So there will be an FAQ that you can use as a resource. But if you have a question that's not on there, you can use an office hour, you can email me, you can email the grants email. It'll get to us.
Yeah. Maybe what is easy to answer, Emily, or easier is like what are non-eligible expenses, and that can help answer some of the questions that maybe folks might be asking.
Yeah. One we often get is, can you cover food? Yes. We have allowed folks to include food in their programming. Can you cover, say, something you're going to give a participant that's they're going to use on their outing? Yes. That is something that we've had participants do in the past. It's like the typical grant non-allowable expenses of like lobbying and any like political action work is really what is outside of the realm, but you can be creative, recognizing there are costs outside of transportation and outside of your staff time to put on these events that might be there. So the big ones I would say are like lobbying. I'll try and pull up the FAQ because I think it actually says on there.
I also see some questions about purchases, bigger purchases to address transportation. The purchase to offset the cost of a vehicle, that is a shuttle. I know sometimes organizations are interested in buying a shuttle. While this funding may not be able to cover the entire cost of the shuttle, it could be used, a portion of it could be used to buy it. Bikes, vouchers.
I think we lost Marian, so I will just keep on where she was, which is yes, the question I hear you back. I'll just keep going, Marian, with what you were saying. We have had folks use this funding to be part of a purchase of a vehicle or some of vehicle maintenance or some vehicle registration fees for the primary vehicle they intend to use to deliver this programming. So while it doesn't have to be just gas, there are other ways, or just rentals of a vehicle, there are other ways you can use that funding, and we use transportation kind of broadly. We've seen folks also pay for rideshare for attendees as a way to get to parks, or renting buses, renting vans, using personal vehicles, things like that. And hopefully that answers Kate's question. She's a question about more information about the innovative transportation criteria or that preference point. Really what we're looking for is something that is rooted in what the community you're looking to serve. And then we do look for innovative opportunities as well. So we've seen some people do gas vouchers or do ride sharing like I've seen before, or maybe they're taking a different mode of transit like bicycles or ferries or things like that. It could really depend. We don't have a concrete definition of it, but we do try and look for that in our applications as well, outside of just driving to a park.
There's another question that is here about the type of program. Do we support new programs, or does it have to be an established program? We have done both. So there is no requirement into this program has to be established and meet certain deliverables. We have funded programs that have use this funding to kick off a new project, and that is certainly allowable as well. It looks like folks, so there's a couple of things that are also popping up. Emily, it looks like office hours are booked up. We might have to get more.
I just saw Kathleen's message. I just added today another day in August. I had folks booking on August 30th, which is great. You can also, I think all my August 31st time should be open as of earlier today. And I'll look at adding some more times too, but thank you, Kathleen.
Yeah, thank you. That's exciting to see the interest. Those are great opportunities to talk specifically about your project and any questions that you might think are unique to your program. 15-minute calls that I think could be super valuable in getting some of that clarity. Let me skim through this as well to see if there's any more.
You know, there's a question from Michaela about her organization or their organization being in Orange County, so it doesn't have any inland state parks or waterways. So one thing I neglected to share is that it's not the only funding we have to support this program. We have other funding we have secured that we'll be using for the projects that don't fit the vision of what Catherine described with the Waterway Connections Initiative. So don't be deterred that there's no way you're going to get funding. We do have funding for it. It's just most of our funding is in that focus of inland and waterway connection.
Yeah, and similar to that, there were a few questions about, well, how much money is available? And like we said upfront, this grant program is a combination of public dollars and private dollars, and we will continue to fundraise up to the very last minute to ensure that we have the greatest pool of dollars available and make sure that we have funding available for those that are not within the Waterway Connections Initiative pool, and we'll be able to use that mapping with this funding available. So far, I think our funding is a little over 800,000, and hopefully by the time we make the award, that'll be a larger investment. But we are looking at this program being statewide, north to south to also east to west.
I'm just responding to some of the questions I know you already responded to, but let's see. Olivia, I don't know if I answered your question. Let me answer. I put answer live. I don't know if it pops the question up for everyone, but I'll repeat it anyway. It says, does the state parks have to be in my jurisdiction, stay in the same county? No, they don't. We do have some folks like Insight Garden Program who their main office is located in Berkeley, but the main, I think, program participants, I know someone's on this call, hopefully I'm saying this correctly, is based down in the Fresno area, and they brought folks up to Sacramento. And we do see, like in a separate grant program that's very similar to this one, we do see folks go all around the state just with what they propose in their program. So it doesn't have to be specific to you or where you're currently at, but just know that we will want to see what is your approach to that and how is that rooted in kind of the community needs. But yes, you can, the real range is the state of California.
I see there's questions about transportation and what is transportation innovation or an innovative approach to it. And as we all know, the transportation need varies, and it really is unique to the setting and communities and where parks are. And we have funded organizations where sometimes the purchase of the shuttle is the right approach to them. For others, it has been that maybe it's the rental or the purchase of bikes. Or for some other ones, they have heard from community that rideshare is the best approach. So there isn't one unique approach that we know will meet the needs of many or consistently across the state. But what we're asking for is, what is the most relevant and innovative approach that will meet the needs of your community and ensuring that this barrier is reduced so that we can get to the end goal, which is building a relationship with nature. I'm scanning. Do you see anything else, Emily or Catherine, that maybe I might have passed? Or we might have passed.
I'm responding to some, and I hope that when I respond to them, it is going to everyone. I think I'm pressing that. Did do this one.
There's a question about the type of programming and if it's geared towards outdoor recreation, nature-based, cultural. There isn't a specific requirement. What we're focusing is on the meaningful connections to nature, and we're really trusting the organization and telling us what are those experiences for the priority communities that you're offering as we think about their visit and their experience in the park. So there isn't a specific call out and type of experience or project that we're supporting.
Okay. I see the question from Sue. Hi, Sue. I saw you yesterday. You said, if I recall correctly, under WCI was K-12 partners. Can we explain K-12 partners? I probably didn't explain that in detail. So we do have some funding in addition to the initiative, the Waterway Connections initiative, that is focusing on bringing K-12 groups into state parks. This doesn't have to be like a school district. We have funded some school districts or county offices of education with the funding we've had similar to this in the past, but it can be if your participant pool is primarily, say, like you're depending on a school or you're coordinating with a school, a K-12 school, to bring folks into parks. So it's a little broad. You don't have to be a school, you don't have to be a school district. We have funded both school, that county office of education, and we also have funded partners and nonprofit partners who are just like really working closely with the school to bring folks into parks. That has, for us, has been, you're focusing on, that's your primary population is K-12 youth. Hopefully that answered.
Emily, I'm sorry if I chuckled a little bit as you were answering, but I was reading a comment that said, we need to start writing the grant now, and you can't wait to talk to your park partners until August 30th.
Yes, yeah, and you can talk to me now. You know, if you want to try and move your time, if you've already scheduled one, I'll check the August 15th date. They've really filled up over the last couple of days, I think, as people have been registering for this webinar, but I'll try and broaden my calendar as best I can. So just check back at that link tomorrow. And there should be some more times available outside of the 15th, 30th, and 31st. Wait, 15th, 30th, and then the 15th of September. But yes, even if you want to email questions, you can do that too. It just might take a little bit more to respond.
There's also a question about folks that have received a Route to Parks grant in the past. Are you eligible to apply? Absolutely. You are able to apply again. We have done awards to programs a couple times in a row, so that's certainly allowable. The only thing has been is if you have requested an extension, we're not able to consider that for the next funding cycle.
Someone has asked, are there any preference for community programs versus school programs? No, we haven't had a preference and we don't have one going into this. I think really what we look at is the applications themselves and who's really rooted in the criteria and preferences that we're looking to fund. And it's been kind of a mix. It's been kind of a mix. We do have some funding for K-12, but I will say every year we get programs that involve schools that we fund with the non-K-12 money. So no preference on either of those.
There is a comment about there's a lot of information here. Will we make this information available? Yes, we will send an email on Monday out to everybody who has registered here and folks that weren't able to join us, and we'll send a link to the recording. We will also send a link to this presentation. We will include a link to FAQs, and what we'll do between now and then is we already have a good bank of frequently asked questions, but we'll update in case there's any that came in here that weren't already addressed in that document. That way more folks have access to some of those questions. Oh, okay. Any other questions that we did a quick skim? And it looks like we covered most of them, if not all, by doing some synthesizing on themes.
Doing some follow-ups to folks who clarified, asked very specific questions. Someone did ask, do you fund networks that would house multiple projects or initiatives? We haven't had a grantee in the past, and Marion, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, that has had multiple projects that are distinctly different from each other that they're running. We have had the question before of, can you apply for multiple awards? But we do look at one application per applying organization. I'd say if you have a couple different avenues you're looking to, or different initiatives you're looking to fund, just try and make that clear in the application, and that is probably a good one. We should set up some time to talk through it together. But just want to say typically one application per organization will be considered.
Okay. Well,
I don't even know what time it is. Oh, it's 2:58.
yeah. I'm just going to do a quick scan just in case there were any that were missed as we were gathering themes throughout, but it looks like we covered everything. Projects, transportation type, and there's the types of initiatives. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining, for your interest in this grant opportunity, and for your great questions. Like Emily said, she'll open up a few more office hours. That all information will be shared on Monday, along with the information that was shared today. Feel free to reach out if there's any other questions. We're really excited about the interest and can't wait to start reviewing some of the proposals that come in. And like our friend here who commented, yes, please start conversations with state parks as soon as you can, please. And if you need any help, feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to make an introduction.